Thank you, Chairman Corker, for convening this and for leading this effort. And thank you, Senator Cardin, for your insights and your questions. I want to pursue three lines of inquiry, if I might. First, on monetization, David, want to commend CARE and you for giving up what is tens of millions of dollars of potential cash for CARE in recognition, if I understood your testimony correctly, that there are harmful effects to monetization, that it's not just inefficient, it also, in some instances, has been documented to have a negative impact on resiliency and on the development of markets in some of the countries we are most trying to help. Why does monetization continue as a practice? And what would be the potential benefits, and how might we structure a reduction to monetization and offset it with a more efficient and responsible practice for supporting NGOs whose primary purpose is providing relief to those who are struggling with food insecurity?
Senator, thank you for your question and for your recognition. There are a couple of reasons that monetization continues. Perhaps the most concrete one is that it's required by law. 15% of the
This
title.
is leading up to my question about what are the most important reforms we could make by law.
Right. So 15% of Title II non-emergency funds are required to be monetized, and so they are. But in fact, on a practical level, there are organizations who continue to monetize because it supports very important ongoing development programs. If, in fact, that money was made available as cash, then we wouldn't have to monetize, and we could be actually getting the full value, 100% of the value of those dollars, rather than 70 cents or less on the dollar, and actually do more good.
So the NGOs...
Senator Coons, if I could I add a minute or two to your time? And for people who are just watching this, ask your witness to explain how monetization works. I think it'd be helpful to everyone and help build a case for what you're trying to do.
If you would, please, because once you really grasp what monetization is and how it works, it's hard to see it as an admirable practice. I am not meaning to impugn those NGOs who benefit from monetization.
Not at all.
They provide valued and needed services, but the inefficiency of it really is striking. So, Mr. Ray, if you would.
But as I mentioned in my testimony, monetization, very simply put, is the practice of buying commodities here, shipping them to developing countries, selling them there, often at a loss, and then using those proceeds to fund long-term development programs. Certainly, our argument has been that it would be a much more efficient and effective way to fund those programs to just supply the money rather than go through that very convoluted method and, in fact, losing money on the whole transaction.
And in the same spirit, Dr. Smith, you testified somewhat about the sea lift, the maritime fleet that is sustained through cargo preference. And Senator Cardin shared some important testimony in front of Armed Services that suggests that sea lift remains an important priority for our national security. You testified earlier that there's a significant mismatch, that a lot of the fleet that is being used for food aid really isn't helpful or relevant for maritime military sea lift. If we were to simply more directly fund through DOD the maintenance of a DOD appropriate sea lift capacity, what difference might there be in efficiency of outcome?
I haven't run those numbers, and I haven't seen a clear number.
A rough impression would be
a rough impression is, let's have a program that has one goal, not be diverted to a program that has another goal.
Right.
That is the fundamental message. If DOD thought the expansion of capacity was important on a maritime basis, then DOD should be making the decisions about allocating funds there. But if I'm a general or an admiral or even a senator with issues associated with maritime shipping, I would really like someone else to have to pay for those costs rather than use my chips. And that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing a litany, if you like, or almost a liturgy from the maritime interests that say this is a vital piece of support. If you look at the dollars, the amount of dollars that actually go to the maritime private sector from food aid are much smaller on a per ship basis than the $3.1 million annually that currently ships that qualify as DOD ready for shipment are currently getting. There's a complete mismatch there. The problem, of course, is that all the funds that come out of food aid into shipping reduce the capacity of the food aid programs at current funding levels to deal with genuine human tragedy.
Right.
And that is what is really problematic. It is not problematic that the Department of Defense wants to make sure they have adequate resources to protect this nation. And it's not problematic. If I owned a ship, I would want cargo preference too. I mean, we understand profit incentives.
Understood. So that brings me to my last question, which I think is really the key question here, Dr. Mercier, and if the whole panel might address this. So we are using food aid partly to provide food aid and partly to provide relief from food insecurity, and partly to sustain sea lift capacity, and partly to sustain the maritime labor, and partly to provide monetization support for NGOs. The concern that has always been raised in these conversations is, what would the impact be if we significantly streamline and modernize this program so that DoD is paying for sea lift, and we're providing direct support for NGOs that are doing important development work, and where it's appropriate, we're buying U.S. commodities and shipping them on Jones Act ships and delivering them with American labor, and where it's not, we are doing direct, flexible, local procurement or direct provision through electronic means, as you testified. How would we sustain food aid? How vital are these sectors to sustaining the allocation of food aid? When Senator Cardin raised this central point, the appropriations for food aid have gone down in recent years, and I'd love to hear from all three of you. What's your guesstimate of the impact on food aid for the long term if we were, in fact, to make it more efficient?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator Coons. And this is an issue that was of great concern for me when I worked on the Agriculture Committee. And sort of what I've worked through over the years is that you need to maintain a balance. And I think it's important to recognize, just based on the LRP pilot program, that there is going to be a continuing need to purchase U.S. commodities and use in these programs. In some cases, it's going to be because it's more cost effective, and that's largely the case with the more value-added commodities, processed products, vegetable oil, that kind of thing. It's still going to be more cost effective to buy it here and ship it overseas, and that's especially the case for nearby destinations like in Central America or Latin America. And then there are some places where there just simply is not enough food, and we need to supplement that with U.S. commodities. So this is going to continue to be a program that uses U.S. food. It just needs to be one that has other mechanisms available as well. The maritime issues, I recognize that this is a legitimate national security objective, is to provide assurance of having that sea lift capacity in the need of emergency. But I don't think this is a cost-effective way of doing it. As Dr. Smith mentioned, the data suggests that a lot of the ships carrying food aid are not suited for that reason.
I'm out of time. My question isn't about cost effectiveness. I think we have discussed in great detail how cost inefficient this is. My question is about whether or not the NGO community and the good intentions of the American people are enough to sustain food aid at its current levels or higher, or whether these other communities of interest have to be engaged in order to sustain food aid. Any opinions from Mr. Ray or Dr. Smith would be welcome as well.
Let me speak to the agricultural sector, because a lot of my work is on agriculture. There's a clear case to be made that American farmers actually will benefit by more efficient use of current dollars, because it takes more food. It essentially increases global demand for these key commodities: wheat, corn, rice, and so on. There's a paradox here. The litany has always been wrong here, that the notion that you have to buy American for American farmers to benefit is simply wrong. If we take the cruel economic view that what they care about is the price of wheat or the price of corn or the price of peanut butter, what matters is how much is being taken off the global market in these globally traded commodities. And I think that's the case that a wide array of supporters of food aid should make. I think there are also, shooting from the hip, with no expertise in this area at all, there are things that we can do to make it clear to the American farmer that their work is critical to feeding the world. For example, where possible, stamping all food aid delivered in bulk, as provided with the support of the American farmer, is a very nice way to go where that's politically appropriate. Things like that are important in sustaining effort. It's unclear to me that the mercantile service is really an important factor in overall development aid here. It's unclear to me what they're doing. It seems to me, to be honest, that the private maritime interests are lobbying for their corporate welfare. And there is an issue about assuring adequate capacity for the marine fleet to support DoD efforts. There are other ways to go that are more efficient, and I'm going to stop there because I'm not an expert in how politically you form those alliances that help them get more money in other directions that would be efficient, but less money than they're currently taking out from the cargo preference approach.
Mr. Chairman, you want to let Mr. A answer the question? Sure.
Thank you. If I may, Cinder, I think you bring up a very critical point and something that certainly has been of concern to us. The last thing we want to do is see support for these vital programs reduced. I will, however, say this. As an organization with 1 million supporters around the country and 250,000 members of our citizen advocacy network in every district and state around the country, our experience has been that the most effective way to build support for foreign assistance programs, and for this program in particular, is for it to be as effective and efficient as possible. If we can deliver on that, we will generate public support for this program, and I'm confident we can retain the level of public support that will provide political support and backing to members of Congress to continue to fund this program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. A. Thank you to the whole panel for your testimony. Thank you, Mr.